Now, with the usual disclaimer that editions can change over time, so there's no guarantee that at the time you look at this, this is exactly what is available. So always check current documentation when you're especially considering features or capabilities that were looked at a particular point in time. So initially we have what's called Azure Active Directory Free. Every single user with a subscription to Azure has an instance of Azure Active Directory, which is the free instance. It's got some pretty big limitations. Well, I say big limitations in the sense that the limitations are actually quite large. This is not meant to limit what you can do. Most of the limitations in the free version come from the tools around self-service and management as opposed to the scale of the directory. So it does support things like directory synchronization with an on-premises Windows Server Active Directory. It does support some basic reports, and it does support things like single sign-on. There is a limit of 500,000 objects. You can then go to Azure AD Basic, which is free, plus some additional capabilities, company branding, self-service password reset. You can then move to Azure AD Premium, which is P1 or P2. These are the two scales that are available. And this just gives you advanced reports and then some additional integration capabilities with your on-premises Windows Server Active Directory, such as what's called write back. If you make a change to a user property in Azure AD, it will push that change to Windows Server Active Directory. If you make a change in Windows Server Active Directory, it will synchronize that change to Azure Active Directory. So it always keeps both directories in sync for whatever users are in the scope of synchronization. You then have Azure AD P1 and P2, not to be confused with Premium, and then also the Azure AD P2 only. And again, different capabilities that exist within each. This begins to introduce multi-factor authentication, cloud app discovery, so you can find applications that are published that have support for Azure Active Directory integration. It also supports auto-enrollment through mobile device management, BitLocker recovery, and some other applications that are capabilities that are typically of interest to an enterprise organization that's got to manage laptops or PCs. And then with Azure AD P2, you get into what's known as privileged identity management. Privileged identity management is a concept we'll talk about a bit later on, but it allows a user to elevate their privilege to a higher level to perform a particular task. For example, an administrator wants to reset a password. When they're logged on as their normal account, they can't. If they try to perform that task, it will allow them to elevate to an administrator to perform that task and then de-elevate them to a regular user when they're done. This avoids the problem of the administrator always logging on as an administrator versus having to manage two accounts.